Hello, my name is Adam from Adventure EXP, and I'm here to guide you through this module where we're going to learn about personal budgeting. And in this instance, we're going to be creating a budget that can be used both in the context of your program at Adventure EXP, but also our hopes is to talk about some things to consider for your personal financial future, where this budgeting tool can then be incorporated in the future for something that you can use as you start working full-time and living on your own, or you graduate college and you're starting a salaried position and things like that. Ultimately, wealth is generated not by the money that you make, but by the money that you don't spend, so the money that you save. And that's ultimately where wealth is generated. So a couple concepts that I want to introduce, especially for those of you that it may be your first time creating a budget. First of all, with your personal adventure guide at Adventure EXP, it's always a safe space to talk about anything and everything that you're going through in anticipation of participating on the program, while you're on the program, and after the program. And I say that because when it comes to money, money can be a really uncomfortable thing to talk about. And, we don't need to get into it, but ultimately, I think at Adventure EXP, we accept that, living in a capitalistic society here in the United States, that, money can be strange to talk about because in many ways it's the way we measure success. So just know that from our perspective, you can always talk to us about your budget and your earnings and your savings goals, because the more you start talking about your budget and the more you start talking about money, the more comfortable you're going to be starting to make decisions within your money and within your budget. Concept number 2, as a rule, for budgeting, you always want to assume worst case scenario. And what I mean by that is you want to assume on a monthly basis, of course, because this is a monthly budget, you want to assume that you're earning the least amount of money possible and that you're spending the most amount of money possible. And the reason we want to create that environment in this Excel just budgeting tool is because if you assume worst case scenario in your budget, and your budget is still able to work under worst case scenario, well, the likelihood of you actually experiencing worst case scenario even once or certainly regularly is pretty low. So if you're assuming worst case scenario in your budget, then ultimately it leaves less or more money left over for you to then make decisions with. That now brings us to the third and possibly the most important concept that I'd like to share. At Adventure EXP, we subscribe to the philosophy that money does not drive happiness. However, what money does is it drives choices. And those choices, they actually have a direct link to your happiness. And a few examples I like to share here is, let's say you're living on your own or you're on our program over the winter and you want to fly home for Thanksgiving to be with your family. If you don't have enough money, then if you have to pay for a flight to go home, you're probably going to take the cheapest flight possible. And the reason you're going to do that is because you don't have the money to be able to book a different flight. So the cheapest flight may include leaving at a strange time, like let's say the middle of the night. It may include multiple layovers. It may include traveling for a full day. And what you're doing in that instance is you're choosing the cheapest option, and what you're sacrificing is your time and your energy and your convenience. If you had money and you wanted to prioritize going home for Thanksgiving, then what you do is you get to make the choices of saying, okay, I can afford to pay for a direct flight from Colorado back to Boston, Massachusetts, for example, and then within there you get to decide, is it worth it? But if you didn't have money and you could only afford the cheapest flight, then you don't have options. But if you have money, you get to make those choices because you have options to pick from. And in our opinion, we believe that money doesn't drive happiness, but it drives choices. And when you get to decide on which choice makes the most sense for you, with all of your competing priorities, then that ultimately drives happiness. So now with all of those concepts incorporated, I now want to introduce this tool. What this tool is it's a tool and it's a static environment, which means nothing you do in here is actually going to change anything listed in your bank account. And it's not going to change any of the habits that you have on a daily basis in terms of how you're saving, what you're saving, where you're saving it, and things like that. Really, the purpose of this tool is to help you organize your thoughts around your monthly expenses and your monthly earnings to then make decisions that best align with your financial goals. So this is nothing that's going to link up to your bank account. It's nothing that's going to link up to your debit card and restrict you from purchasing things. It's nothing like that. But what it is it's an exercise that you can come back to on a monthly basis. After you've created your budget, you then can decide, your financial situation and where you want to allocate your money. But then as you revisit it on a monthly basis, you can see how did your actual spending habits relate back to the budget that you created. The way that this file works is you can download this in the description below, so you can find your own file. But the way this works is you're going to enter in the information that pertains to, in the context of Adventure EXP's program, what is the hourly rate that you're going to be making? Is it a tip position, and what does that look like? We've hard-coded in here the minimum weekly hours of 35 because all of our employers are going to offer you at least 35 work hours. Even though they may offer you 40 hours, they may offer you overtime. Again, we want to assume worst case scenario. So we're going to include 35 hours here. And then a personal tax rate of 15%. This is pretty common what our students experience on the program. So again, as you're incorporating this budget in your own life outside of the scope of Adventure EXP's program, maybe your tax rate is lower or higher depending on where you live. So just for a hypothetical situation, let's put in $17 per hour, which is a pretty common pay rate for an hourly position. And let's just say, just to make it simple, there's a pool, there's a tip sharing pool that you get per month. And it's not going to be so much money. Let's just say it's going to be $100 in tips. That you see that it's multiplied here to determine on a net monthly basis, this is the amount of money coming into your bank account. So let's introduce a few terminologies here. Whenever you see this word net, it means after expenses. Maybe you've heard things like the bottom line or net income or net earnings and things like that. What it's basically saying is the net is whatever your earnings are after your expenses. So in this case, net monthly salary means your hourly rate times the hours you're working per week times the number of weeks in a month, which is typically 4. And then it's adding in $100 in estimated tips. But then it's taking out the cost of taxes because you're never going to see the money that you're earning, which is called your gross earnings pre-tax. You're going to see it after taxes. So this is the amount that's actually coming into your bank account on a monthly basis. So that's your net monthly salary, meaning this is the money that you're going to be able to spend money on the various expenses that we're going to talk about here in a second. The way this form works is we've broken it down into multiple sections. We have housing, transportation, food, clothing and your cell phone, healthcare expenses, entertainment, other expenses that ultimately adds up to your grand total expenses. And then at the bottom here, it's going to show your net earnings, meaning what's left over after you've earned all of this money, you've spent all of this money, this is the amount that you have left over. Ideally, you want money left over because, again, that gives you choices. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a hypothetical situation here that is pretty common for students that experience on our program. And then what I'd like you to do is take the budgeting tool that you've downloaded from the description in this video, and then I want you to incorporate this for your own situation because I'm going to be creating an example of a student, but your situation is going to be different from every other student that's ever traveled on our program because everybody has a different relationship with money. Okay, so let's just start here. Now, rent on our program, because we do provide housing on the program, but the housing cost gets taken out of your paycheck, and it does vary based on location. If you were to do, some of our programs, we have housing that's only $100 a month, and some of our programs have housing that's $1,000 a month. So the average is right around $500 per month. So let's be average here, and let's just say $500 per month. Now, in the real world, quote unquote, when you go and get your own apartment or get your own house, you're, in addition to paying your rent or your mortgage payments, you're also going to pay utilities, which is, think your electric, your water, your trash, your sewer, things like that. You're also maybe going to pay for maintenance on your house. Oftentimes you have renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance, and then your cable and internet, which, those are important things to have in the house. And I think it's important to break them out from utilities. Now, on our program, all of these expenses, they actually get included in this number. So you don't need to add up any of these other things because they get added into the rent house payment. So you see it's totaled here, it's subtotaled, to say total housing is $500 per month. Let's continue. Let's say you're planning to bring a car on the program and your car payment is $125 per month. And, let's say you bought this car with a loan with the help of your parents, and you're going to continue paying this during the course of your program. For gas and repairs, let's just say, this is a Honda CR-V. So small SUV with decent gas mileage. So in this one, the reason I say with decent gas mileage is, let's just say for gas and repairs, you end up spending $50 every single time that you fill up, and you tend to fill up about 3 times a month. So what we're going to do is we're going to write in here $50 for every full tank, and I fill up my tank 3 times a month on average. So for this one, we're going to list $150 here. And what we could also do is just put in 50 multiplied by 3. And it's going to give us the same number here. The reason I think it's important to add comments is because the less thinking you have to do when you come back to this tool month after month, meaning if you know exactly what this $150 comes from or where it comes from and exactly what assumptions you included into it, then you just have to think less, and it makes it less intimidating to think about your budget, and it makes it much easier to start making the right decisions. Let's say auto insurance, let's just say this one is currently covered by parents. So this one's going to stay at 0. Registration, we'll keep it 0. A public transportation pass, almost always on our program, the public transportation, if you use it, it's free. Ubers, Lyfts, and scooters, let's just say you don't need that because many of the seasonal communities we live with or run programs in, they actually have pretty convenient public transit, so you likely don't need Ubers, Lyfts, and scooters. So this one, the total transportation cost is going to be $275. Now let's look at groceries. The reason I say these notes here, review actual spend from your most recent 3 months of normal spending, is because time and time again, we see students that say one number associated with going to the grocery store every month or going out to restaurants and bars and things like that. And oftentimes they end up thinking that they spend much less than they actually spend on a monthly basis. So I think it's really important for all of these categories to review your actual expense to see how it relates to your budget, but especially in these 2 categories because oftentimes you think you spend much less than you actually spend on a monthly basis. So for groceries and food, these 2 categories actually have an inverse relationship. Because the more money you spend at the grocery store, that typically means the less money you're going to spend out at restaurants. And the more money you spend at restaurants typically means the less meals you're going to be buying at the grocery store. And then, just as a concept, going out to eat at restaurants, especially now in 2022, right at the end of 2022, it's much, much more expensive to go out to restaurants than it is to make food at the house. So when you're going out to a restaurant, not only are you eating and getting the food that you need, but you're also going for the social experience and also not having to cook and clean and grocery shop and do dishes and things like that. So what you're really paying for is the convenience. So let's just say for groceries, because many of our program locations offer free meals for our students while they're on the program. So let's just say for groceries, you're going to spend $120 per month. And for restaurants, maybe you're going to go out to eat 4 times a month and you're going to spend $30 each time. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 30 times 4, and that's going to give us another $120. So again, just a hypothetical situation of $240. Of course, this depends on your relationship with food. Next, let's go down to your cell phone and clothing. Let's just say hypothetically covered by parents for your cell phone, so you don't currently pay for that. With clothing, this is an interesting one because it really comes down to what is your relationship with buying clothes. Are you someone who likes to go shopping for social activities and you tend to go thrifting and also buy clothes online because it's really fun? Or are you someone that buys clothes as little as possible? Maybe you buy it that one time a year, and when you buy it that one time a year, you're spending, let's say, $300. So let's say this situation with clothing is that you're one of those people that's only going to buy it once a year. So what we want to do to build that on a monthly basis is buying clothes once a year and typically spending, let's say, $200. I just want to add a dollar sign here. It's typically spending $200. So what we want to do here is we want to do 2 equals 200 divided by 12. Because that means if we know at the end of the year, or it doesn't, at some point in the year, we're going to spend $200 total on our clothing, then if we start budgeting for that on a monthly basis, then at the end of the year, whenever we do purchase that $200 of clothing, we've been budgeting for it with $16.67 every single month throughout the year and factor that into our budget. So the total expense here, because the cell phone is free and the clothing is $16.67 on average that you want to save per month, this is the total. Now let's jump down into healthcare. The majority of the students that we work with on the program don't have to pay for their own healthcare because they're on their parents' healthcare plan, which is great. The reason we include this here is because healthcare is an important part of living in America. And the way we like to say it is that healthcare in this country is very high quality, but it's also very expensive. And oftentimes healthcare is tied to your employment, which means if you aren't fully employed or your employer doesn't offer healthcare benefits, then it's on you to go to the open marketplace and obtain your own healthcare, your dental and your vision and your life insurance. So for this one, I want to keep this one at 0. But I love talking about this section because it's really important just to conceptually introduce that this is something that you should anticipate in your future, not on our program most likely, but something that you should anticipate for your future because healthcare is very expensive in this country. There's 2 costs associated with healthcare. You have your monthly premium and your total deductible. If you haven't heard these terms before, your monthly premium means this is the expense that you pay on a monthly basis to have healthcare. Healthcare costs can range all the way from, some employers offer they cover your healthcare premium, so you pay $0. But in most cases, your employer will pay a portion of your premium, and then they pass through a cost to you. So sometimes this ranges from $25 up to $500. And then, of course, as you have dependents, let's say you have a significant other, like a wife or a husband or a life partner, or you have children that are dependent, if they're all on your healthcare as well, that will increase your premium. Then the second cost is your deductible. This means whatever your deductible is, let's say your deductible is $5,000. That means you first need to pay $5,000 before your insurance will cover the rest of your expenses. So if you're getting an insurance plan that has a high deductible, let's say $7,500 or $10,000 as a deductible, that means that if you were to get into an accident or get injured or needed surgery, you would need to pay that full deductible before insurance would cover the rest of the expense. So those are really the 2 expenses associated with healthcare. We're going to leave this one at 0 because, like I mentioned, the majority of the students we work with aren't covering their own healthcare expense, but it is important to start thinking about what healthcare is like. This next category, the entertainment category, is my second favorite category. We'll get to my favorite category here in a second. But the reason this is my second favorite category is we call this your fun budget. And it's really important because, in our opinion, why do we work? Well, we work to live the life that we want to live. And in my opinion, fun is a valuable thing to strive for and something to allocate money towards on a monthly basis. And fun is completely subjective. Maybe your idea of fun is every single year you want to take an international trip to a country you've never been to with a friend or a significant other. Maybe your idea of fun is you want to go backpacking on the Appalachian Trail and you're section hiking it, so every single summer you want to do more and more of the Appalachian Trail. Maybe your idea of fun is going to the movies, or it's going bowling, or playing putt-putt, or whatever that looks like. Your concept of fun is your concept of fun. And in my opinion, it's important to budget for fun because then you get to go out there into the world and you're working, and then you get to go have the fun that you want to have without any guilt because you're budgeting for it on a monthly basis. So let's just say hypothetically in this situation, this includes, going to the movies. It includes buying random things on Amazon, like new board games and gadgets. And then you also really like painting, so painting supplies. So let's just say on a monthly basis, this fund budget, let's just put it at $100. I think $100 is a good place to start. We're at a budget just as we're going through this. And again, we'll be able to see at the bottom how much money do we have left over. And then maybe we wanted to come up here and we wanted to up this to $300 because why not? So let's not get crazy right now and let's just keep it at $100. The next section I want to go through is just some other expenses, so some miscellaneous categories. First one, let's go through personal care. The way we think about this is your haircuts, your gym memberships, membership at a yoga studio. Maybe you work with a counselor or a therapist, and you have a visit expense. Like each time it's $35 or $100 to work with that therapist. Things like that. This is what we try and factor into personal care. So let's just say for this one, it includes a gym membership of, we're just going to make it up, of $80. And it includes a haircut. Let's just say you're getting a haircut every 2 months. So a haircut of $60 every 2 months. And let's say there is a $30 yoga studio membership. So what we want to include here is, what we did here is we have $80 for your gym membership once a month, and we have $30 for your yoga studio membership. So right there, that's $110. But this is saying you have a haircut every 2 months, which means per month you should be budgeting $30 for that haircut, because after 2 months you're going to spend $60. So what we're going to do is we're going to incorporate here. We're going to say 80 plus 30 plus, we're going to just introduce parentheses here just for orders of operations, and we're going to do 60 divided by 2, which ultimately this should give us $140. So if you think about it, just to check our math, we have 80 plus 30 is 110 plus 30 is 140. So there, our personal care, we're allocating $140. Subscription services is a big one because, again, similar to this category up here, groceries and restaurants, this is a category where many students are surprised how much money they're actually spending on subscription services. So here we're going to say Netflix, we're going to say you also have Hulu, and you also have Xbox Live. So for this one, we're going to incorporate, let's just say it's $10 for Netflix. Again, this is just hypothetical situation. $10 for Hulu, and we're going to say it's $15 for Xbox Live. So total, your subscription services are $35 a month. Now, this section, the retirement section, this is my absolute favorite section. And the reason it's my favorite section is because time is your most valuable asset when you're thinking about investing. So this account is representing a long-term savings account. It could be a savings account with your bank. It could be something called a CD. It could be an IRA. There's a wide variety of different savings accounts, and that's why we've included a link to this article that introduces types of long-term savings accounts. From our perspective, it's not about right or wrong. And which accounts, it's not for us to say which accounts are best or which accounts are worse. It's really about you identifying what are your long-term personal financial goals, and then finding long-term investment accounts that can support those long-term investment goals. The reason this is my favorite category is because of this thing called compound interest. So interest is the money that you earn by letting someone, in most cases it's a bank, by letting someone borrow your money. So if you put your money into a savings account, just a traditional savings account, maybe the interest is very, very low. So you're noticing, you've got a few $1,000 in there, and then every month you're getting a couple pennies, like 8 cents or 9 cents, things like that. So they're paying you interest for keeping money in that savings account. That money then compounds, where in this example, if you put $1,000 into a savings account that's earning 5% interest, in the first year, you're going to earn $50. So at the end of the year, you're going to have $1,050. But the next year, as you're now earning 5%, not on the original $1,000, but you're now earning 5% on the new $1,050, that this actually is compounding, where you're earning interest on your interest. and over time. Now, if you see, the difference here is $2.50, right? Because at the end of the second year, you have $1,102.50. So instead of just gaining $50 in a year, you're gaining $52.50 in that year. Over time, over, let's say, the course of 50 years, let's say the length of your career, and you're contributing money into this, compound interest is magic. Because if you follow this article, and if you were to look at just one example as a Roth IRA, where you can calculate compound interest over, let's say, the course of 50 years, that money that you're putting in compounds over time, and you have thousands and thousands of dollars earned in interest for you really passively just putting in money on a passive basis. So in this case, you might be in a situation where you don't even have a bank account yet. That's okay. You may be in a situation where you have a bank account that you have both a checking and a savings account. That's great. You may be in a situation where you're already investing in a long-term investment account. That's amazing. But wherever you're at, I think right now is a time to start thinking about what are your long-term savings goals and what accounts are available for you to consider as an option. Then right now we're going to leave this at 0 because I would say the majority of the students that we work with in the program aren't coming in with a retirement account, but it's something that we want to revisit because I think this is a really important function of participating on this program and thinking about your personal finances on a long-term basis. For an emergency fund, this is basically money that you want to put aside on a monthly basis, not to spend and not so much to save, but really to allocate to the unexpected. You know, the battery in my truck just died recently. So I put money on a monthly basis into an emergency fund, and I now had to spend $300 to get a new truck battery. So what I'm doing is I'm expecting the unexpected. So I know that I don't know when my car battery is going to die. So if on a monthly basis I'm saving money in an emergency fund, then when those expenses happen, it doesn't completely devastate me because I've been expecting the unexpected. And that's really what an emergency fund is all about. So for this one, we're just going to put $50 a month in this emergency fund. I would say that's pretty common across the students that participate with us. Education and loan payments. This may be something if you went to a private high school and you have student loans from that, or if you graduated from college or you're in college and you now have student loans that are due. We're going to leave this one at 0 as well because everybody's student loan payments are very different, but this is something just to think about, that on a monthly basis, how much are you spending on your student loans? The last category is a big one, credit card payments. A credit card is a very powerful tool. And the reason I say it like that is because it's a powerful tool where you can spend someone else's money. So in this case, in most cases, it's the bank's money. And while you're spending their money, they'll give you money in the form of, flight points, or they'll give you cash back. There's all sorts of different benefits to using credit cards, and it's free money so long as you know how to use your credit card. And the way to use your credit card is to pay off your statement balance in full every single month. This way, you'll never pay a late payment and you'll never pay interest on a credit card. And therefore, all the money that the credit card company is giving you for free is actually free money, and they're not making it back by charging you 25% interest on a credit card. In this instance, this category is only if you have credit card debt that you're only making the minimum payment on, meaning you have a leftover statement balance on a monthly basis. This is something that I would highly encourage you to start budgeting more than your minimum. Let's say your minimum is $25 a month. If you continue to pay your minimum, let's say you have $1,000 left on your credit card, you will never, well, not never, but it will take you years and years and years to pay off that full balance. And over time, you'll have paid the entire balance of that $1,000 double because of the interest that you're paying. Right? The same magic of compound interest that we talked about here, it's the pain of compound interest working against you on credit card payments. So with this one, we're going to leave it blank, but I always like talking about this one because if you have a credit card and you have a balance on your credit card that's carried over month, it's really important that you recognize if you don't pay off your statement balance in full, then you're actually going to be paying interest on the money left over on your credit card. So again, we're going to leave this one at 0 because let's say you're the type of person that has a credit card, puts all of your expenses, so every single one of these expenses goes on your credit card every single month, and you pay it off in full. You wouldn't then want to put that expense here because you don't want to double dip your expenses. Those expenses are already represented in these categories. You just happen to be spending them on a credit card instead of on a debit card. Okay, great. So now the total other expenses, $225. The grand total expenses, that's taking every single one of these subcategories that we just added, and it's adding them up to say on a monthly basis, it costs you $1,356.67 to live the life that you're living. Now, this brings us down to the most important section. The leftover amount after all of your earnings, so this money that you're earning and all of your expenses, that means you have $751.33 left over in what we call free cash, which means it's money that doesn't need to be allocated to your normal expenses. This is amazing because it gives you choices. And what those choices mean is that you now get to decide, do I want to allocate more money to fun? Maybe I want to up this to $300 a month because I really want to prioritize fun. Okay, let's jump this back down to 100. Maybe you want to start going out to eat more because you're in a new relationship or you're meeting new people in a new community, and going out to eat is a really fun way. Maybe you want to allocate more money to this. Maybe you want to start saving more money or start a long-term investment account because you have this money left over. Alternatively, maybe this is money you just want to keep in a savings account because you want to be able to access it because you know you're saving for buying gear to go hike the Appalachian Trail at some point in the near future. This money gives you choices, and those choices oftentimes can drive happiness. Let's just look at a hypothetical situation, and let's just say you're in a load of credit card debt. Let's say $10,000 of credit card debt. And therefore, on a monthly basis, you want to start paying $800 on your credit card. What this is doing, it's now showing it in red. Red means bad, and it's in parentheses, which is the accounting, it's an accountant or financial way of representing a negative, which means you are short almost $50 a month. And this means you do not have choices because you are short $50 a month, which obviously you can't be short $50 a month. So maybe that looks like you would need to come in here and no longer go to the gym, which is something that's really important to you. But if you can't afford it, your choices are now taken away from you. So since we're not actually in credit card debt, we're going to take that away and we're going to keep this on. This gives you choices. And this is your basic introduction to a budget. So just to recap, you're inputting your potential earnings here. We're always assuming worst case scenarios. So we're going to assume we're going to work the bare minimum. Of course, maybe we decide to work a full 40 hours a week. Maybe we decide to work overtime, and that needs to be free. We don't want to factor that into our budget, but ultimately that will deliver more money left over in our account. So we want to always assume worst case scenario, meaning we're earning the least amount of money and we're spending the most amount of money. And therefore, this situation is worst case scenario. And if that's worst case scenario and you can still live with that, then that truly gives you choices to start spending your money in unique ways that align with what you're interested in doing. So a budget is only as important as you make it, or it's only as accurate as you make it. Which means if you were to put money in here, and let's say we keep $120 in your groceries, but in reality, you're actually spending $200 a month. Well, listing this $120 here, it doesn't do anything to curb your expenses because you're spending $200. It doesn't do anything in your bank account to limit your ability to spend $200 at, Kroger or whatever. All it's doing is now your budget is out of whack because it's not an accurate representation of your actual expense. My recommendation would be to create this budget, both in the context of what it's going to look like in participating in our program, but then also save this as a file for something that you can use in the future when you're trying to figure out how to move from the dorms to off-campus in college, or how to move out and get your own apartment, or moving in with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or whatever that looks like. use this as a tool that you can come back to and revisit to really feel comfortable and confident in your personal financial journey. I hope this session was informative for you, and know that your guides here at Adventure EXP are happy to talk to you anytime about your earnings and your savings and your financial goals, whether it's in the context of our program or it's in the context of decisions that you're saving for way down the future. We're here to help guide you through this, because thinking about your personal finances and actually taking action on your personal finances can be very intimidating. So I think it's important to know your resources that are available to you. Start researching what long-term investment accounts are there, researching tools of how you can budget more effectively, and start asking the right questions. That is where you can deliver a meaningful life where you have money working for you as a real tool to help you make decisions. Thank you so much for tagging along in this module to introduce personal finances in the context of building a program budget. And let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.